Welcome back to the Reynolds Reveal. We here at the Guerrilla Media Network do welcome your calls, and the number is 218-862-9829. I'm your host, Morgan Reynolds, and my special guest today is Andrew Johnson from the United Kingdom. And he lives in the UK. I'm sure he was born, I'm guessing, but sounds to me like he was born in the UK. And he's worked in software development and education for some 25 years, developing software used in telecom and process control PCs and database systems. So, hey, he's an IT guy. Probably somebody I should talk to more often to help me out. And back in 2003, when he got broadband internet access, he began to research what he terms alternate knowledge topics. Yeah. I think that's a very nice way to put it, including his research into 9/11, anomalies on Mars, or at least the reports we get from NASA about Mars, the Apollo missions, chemtrails, and crop circles. And he's had association with Dr. Judy Wood's work and mine, and what he terms conclusive research into some of the events of 9/11. And he's posted lots of useful things on his website, checktheevidence.com. And then he's put out a free ebook called 9/11, Finding the Truth. And you will find amusement in there, as well as solid information about what's going on, much of it behind the scenes in the whole 9/11 effort. So welcome to the Reynolds Reveal, Andrew.
Thank you, Morgan. Thanks for that excellent introduction.
And we want to talk about maybe 5 or 6 of these issues that you've delved into. The first one I know quite a bit about, but you've got some news on 9/11. One of them being to tell us about Richard D. Hall's recent tour, and of course in episode 6 I had both of you on. So what can you tell us about Richard's latest enterprise there on 9/11?
Yeah, well, Richard, we discussed some of the things he was going to talk about on his tour, and basically Richard did, you can go onto his website and find the details, but he did about, I think, 8 or 9 dates over a period of about 2 weeks, I think. And he did basically a 2 to 3 hour, show with a break in the middle. And the first half, he talked quite a lot about 9/11. And, he was basically talking about some of the things that I talked about in my book, in that we now know some of what happened on 9/11, particularly at the World Trade Center. And I know you've had Dr. Judy on a few times, and we've spoken about that at some length. And Richard was also talking about that in his tour, and that was kind of the basis for what he was saying about 9/11, in that we've essentially now got to the point where, we can prove pretty much what happened to the World Trade Center, and we know quite a lot about the sorts of, or the nature of the technology that was involved in doing what was done. And, when we go on from there, we can then document the effort to keep that knowledge covered up. And, he went into quite some detail about 2 people that have popped onto the scene. Well, one's been on the scene for quite a long time. Ian Henshaw, who's a UK guy whose parents apparently, or one of his parents, worked for MI5 or MI6, I forget which one. And Ian Henshaw runs this website called Reinvestigate 9/11. And, I've sort of challenged Ian Henshaw as to why, he's organised several public events about, saying that the official story of 9/11 is untrue and all of this. But almost exclusively, he's talking about, limited hangout topics. He won't discuss, for example, your Keatam case. He won't discuss Dr. Wood's Keatam case. He won't discuss Where Did the Towers Go, the book. In fact, he won't really talk about any of those things. And I've basically asked him in several email messages, Ian, why aren't you talking about this scientific evidence, this scientifically analysed evidence? Which is
Andrew, do you think he has a following? In other words, he's worth countering.
Well, I don't know how big his following is. He sends out these regular emails, which always make me sort of chuckle to myself. Because he's basically come back at me and said that I've attacked him, and of course, I mean, it's now that if you ask a question of these people, it's attacking them, I've just basically said to him, well, look, Ian, this is pretty well shown now, and I mean, you and I know that thousands of people have got Dr. Wood's book now. I mean, we are talking in the thousands now, and Ian Henshaw has also written a couple of books about 9/11. And I won't spend too much time on this because, frankly, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think he has got a very big following, and I think he's probably, he's probably trying to make out that he has is presenting this impression. And Ian Henshaw has written 2 books about 9/11, and I think collectively they've got 4 reviews on Amazon. I think, and neither of which are
okay,
particularly.
There's a good indicator.
Right, and of course, if you go onto Dr. Judy Wood's Amazon book page, I don't know how many reviews. I think there's 115 or something last count, something like that.
I think it was that whole thing turned into a food fight.
Yeah.
There's over 1,000 entries.
Yeah, well, in the actual terms of the reviews, I think there's about 115. But then if you go onto the comments on some of them, I think Fetzer's review has got, like, as you say, about 1,000 or 2,000 or something comments on it. 6,000 is somebody's like Pete's saying there. I mean, it's just absolutely. I mean, that must be one of the most commented on reviews on the whole of the Amazon network. It must be. This shows you how important it is. It shows you how important this is and how hard they must work, to keep this covered up. And I think, to try and just spend a couple of minutes on this topic that I was mentioning in the email that I sent earlier today to you, we've had this Niels Harriot fellow, the Danish chemist. He's recently been on this Red Ice Radio. You've just posted an article that covers that and related on Red Ice. So tell us about that. Yeah, did you get a chance to read the article at all?
I did read your article, yeah.
Oh, good, yeah. So you got the gist of sort of what's been going off. Yeah. And I think maybe I've asked Pete there, I did send him the audio clip, and I think maybe if we were to set the scene, let's see, I'll just find out how long that audio clip is. I think it's like 2 or 3 minutes or something. We're going to be brazen and play this clip.
Okay, good.
It's actually 4 minutes long, so is that going to be okay with breaks and stuff if we go into this clip, or?
Yeah.
Are we okay, Pete? I think we are.
We'll be fine. Absolutely. I'm controlling the board.
Okay, so all right. So if you want to play that clip then, which is 4 minutes, this will kind of set the scene, I think, quite well for just this first discussion.
The truth will prevail.
Well, I hope you're right. I think so as well. It's we're all struggling and fighting to figure out what exactly has happened and how it occurred, the motives behind it. And although we do have a lot of pieces, and the pieces, in my view, primarily points to that something is not right with the official story, there are inconsistencies and everything. It's very difficult to determine exactly how things, came about, of course. And then to going on from that, there's a lot of different theories out there. And one of them that I found also very interesting is some of the suggestions by Judy Wood, suggest that an exotic weapon technology was used to basically pulverize the buildings, a directed energy weapon, as she calls it. What do you make of some of those ideas, Niels?
What do you mean directed energy weapon?
It's basically a new suggestion in terms of an exotic technology that has been, well, we don't know that either, but in development by some of the Black Ops weapon producers out there, DARPA, whatever call it what you will, that there's a new type of weapons technology that is largely unknown, but that was used on 9/11. You maybe haven't heard about that theory.
Well, since it is basically unknown, it's very difficult to talk about, isn't it?
I'll send you some stuff on that. You can take a look at it. It's pretty interesting, actually. It's just some other suggestions in terms of why it would basically answer the question that you asked before. Why do it in such a way that it, booms out like a mushroom, like in this way, like it turns into this immense dust cloud, and she has some potential answers for that. So it's very interesting.
No, she doesn't. Nobody knows what Judy Wood is talking about. I'm sorry. Nobody knows what she's talking about.
Why not?
Energy is not a thing. Energy is a concept we use in calculations. So if you want to discuss something, you have to be specific. Tell me, what is a directed energy weapon?
Well, she is the theory. I'm not behind it. I have her book. I looked through the material, and it's some pretty interesting stuff there. Some suggestions, and that's all. And if you don't know about it, and if you want to find out about some possibilities, other ideas, I suggest looking into her work and following up on it on yourself, and see if it answers some of these questions that we've been trying to answer here.
Okay.
All right.
I have no further comments.
Okay, sure, no worries. All right. Well, is there anything else kind of big that we've left out? Something major in your work that you've been following, or some in terms of your analysis or tidbits kind of along the way that are further inconsistencies that we haven't talked about? Something to bring up?
No, not really. I think we have covered everything. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you again for coming on, Niels. I really appreciate that.
Maybe as a last word, I would point your listeners' attention to the Consensus Project, 9/11 Project. If you go to www.consensus911.org, you will find a collection of evidence, which is the best evidence. It is evidence which has been really tested by a panel of 19 experts following a blindfolded method, which means that the conclusions coming out of it are reliable. So if anybody wants to get something which can be trusted, the best evidence available, I will direct them to consensus911.org, or just write the Consensus 9/11 Project in Google, and you will find the web page.
Very good.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, consensus911.org, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Andrew. They should call that website Crap 9/11. Consensus, Consensus just gives it away.
Right.
You just float downstream with the rest of the flotsam. You don't bother thinking, that you can trust this.
Right. I mean, this is sort of the typical sort of revamping of scholars for 9/11 truth. They're trying to sort of stay in that line, or it's all this sort of evidence you can trust. It's, they'll say peer reviewed or something like that, and, you can just listen to that whole clip, and it's just horrendous. And I think, particularly, I knew what Harriet was about. I mean, I'd corresponded with the guy in 2008, and I'd said, what about these, upside down cars? What about this paper that's not burning and the car's, inches away in flames? Wouldn't talk about it. He would not talk about this. And this guy's meant to be, a PhD scientist. Now, I understand his PhD is either an honorary PhD, or it's a made-up PhD, as I understand it. Somebody wrote to me and said that he doesn't have, a full PhD.
I was going to wonder. I was thinking about asking you about his real credentials. So,
right.
Yeah, it sounds suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's sort of by the by, really, because we can just focus on what he actually said and his reaction.
Yes.
And saying that energy is not a thing, and all this nonsense.
Yeah, it's a concept. What did he say? A concept used in calculation.
Yeah,
that is empty talk by an alleged scientist.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's done that for several years now, and he seems to get away with it. And coincidentally, this Harriet guy, going back to this Ian Henshall guy, there was this, TV license court case which I posted an article about, and Harriet was actually called as a witness to this trial in the UK. So he's had to come over from Denmark he didn't get called into the court in the end, but he came over from Denmark, to come to this court case. I mean, who's paying for this? Who's paying his airfare and whatnot? Yeah. People that were involved with this court case, one particular person I can think of called Tony Farrell, he personally knows me, and he knows, that I've been involved with Dr. Wood's research. And she could have been called as a witness if he wanted. We could probably have sorted that out.
Yeah, and the judge wasn't allowing any of that. It's all beside the point for his failure to play his TV tax. You are listening to the Reynolds Reveal, and Andrew Johnson is speaking to us late at night in the UK, explaining recent developments in 9/11. Welcome back to the Reynolds Reveal. We here at the Guerrilla Media Network do love to hear from listeners, and the number to call is 218-862-9829. I'm your host here at the Reynolds Reveal, Morgan Reynolds, and this afternoon we are speaking with Andrew Johnson from the UK, who is a fearless researcher on a number of topics, and the most important to me is 9/11, and Andrew, pick up again with the Red Ice radio encounter you've had.
Right. Well, we played that clip before the break, and people might want to go and replay it or something. I've got that in an article on my website, because this really,
which is checktheevidence.com.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, and you can go over to the right-hand side, and it says recent postings, and you'll find a posting that I've made called Red Ice Radio joins the Disinformation Promotion Brigade, because I've seen this as a pattern. Now, I must point out that Red Ice Radio, I've sort of listened to them for several years, and I was listening to them even before they invited me on as a guest in 2010, and I went on, I think, possibly even before Dr. Wood did. And so Dr. Wood went on and spoke about where did the towers go, and it was actually the first time she went on was just around the time that the book was coming out. And so because the book hadn't actually travelled across from its to the get delivered, the books hadn't actually been fully printed and ready. She was kind enough to send Henrik Palmgren, the Red Ice host, an electronic PDF copy so that he could review it before the interview. And he seemed, perfectly happy with that and quite interested in it. And so, and then later he was sent a printed version of the book. So he had all that information. I'd, for example, been on the program, and you can listen at least to the first hour for free, although they might take it off now when I sort of read to you what I'm going to read to you in a minute or two. But I went on there and basically went through the connection here. One of the key factors that we've come up with in the overall research is the connection between energy and 9/11, and one of the key figures in that is this Stephen E. Jones character, because we do know, this is a fact, it's not a theory, just like everything else we're trying to talk about. He was involved in cold fusion research in the 1980s and early 90s, and that to me, he appears on the scene of 9/11 research in 2005, just after the NIST reports came out. And we've established, really, from looking at the evidence, that the energy effects that are seen in the evidence, this is Dr. Wood's research, not really my research as such, are important. And one of the things that comes up, for example, is tritium, because we've got this anomalous tritium reading in the water which was sampled from around where the World Trade Center was after the events. And the tritium, I think, was 50 times higher than would be expected. So it's not like as high as what comes out of a nuclear reactor, which is 10,000 or 100,000 times above normal.
Yes, but she addresses this in
the book.
Where do the towers go?
Right,
yes.
right. And tritium was also one of the important characteristics that was seen in these cold fusion experiments, and not everyone that performed these experiments, got the tritium, but people like John Bockris, who I understand was at the university that you were at, Morgan, Texas A&M, his team, they reproduced results where they found tritium in their cold fusion or low energy nuclear reaction experiments that they did. To sort of investigate what Pons and Fleischmann had investigated. So we can see this connection quite clearly in the evidence, and this is not a theory. There is a connection here. We can't fully say, how exactly that connection unfolds, what it means in terms of technology, but we can see that nuclear effects are involved in what happened to the World Trade Center. And I would contend quite clearly that's why we've had all these stories about nukes coming out, micro nukes, underground nukes, neutron bomb nukes, and all this nonsense that's come out since about 2005 or so, 2006. It's to cover up these nuclear effects, which are something to do with this thing called the Hutchinson effect. And I don't want to go into this here because we've got other things to talk about, but that's where we're going with this. And so,
it all looks very much like a cover-up on multiple fronts.
Exactly. And now the red ice thing seems to be, unfortunately, another part of that. And I'll try and sort of qualify those remarks. As I listened to Red Ice, I enjoyed the program. Henrik is a clever bloke. He's done a lot of research. When you go and listen to it yourself, heck, even subscribe if you want to. It's entirely up to you. If you listen to the way he talks to his guests, he's very knowledgeable. He asks informed questions. He thinks about things. He's been doing this since 2006, so that's 7 years. He knows a lot of stuff, and so he knows, for example, that he should know, what's in Dr. Wood's book is not a theory. It's a set of evidence. He should know about the Ketam case. You can't go to a court case with theory. You have to have the evidence.
Well, you know what my impression is, and I've only listened to your 4-minute clip you posted, is that it's like a person pleading for a hearing, trying to sound also reasonable and soft around the edges. And but therefore he misstates things, like Dr. Wood is making a suggestion or hinting at a new
right.
And all this stuff that's not the way to proceed. Let's get at the truth, no matter how inconvenient it may be.
Right. And I think, when Red Ice listeners listen to that, they'll think that Henrik, in fact, somebody wrote to me and said this, Andrew, you've got it wrong here, because Henrik's actually and actually wrote this on my Facebook page. Henrik is championing Judy Wood's information. That's the word that he used, championing it. And I said, he's not doing that. He's
Jim Fetzer does too,
well,
right?
Exactly. It's no different to that.
You're muddling it up is a term you've used.
Exactly. Yeah, muddling it up, and mischaracterizing it. And there is not only there is no need to do that, but by doing that, you're helping the cover up. And then people wonder, well, is Henrik just not quite clued in? Is he just doing this because it's his maybe because his first language is not English, or something? Is it that, or is it this, or is it because he doesn't want to offend certain groups of his listeners and all this? And you can ask all these sorts of questions. And I asked those questions.
What it also reminds me of is Stephen E. Jones, whose demeanor was so persuasive, just good propaganda. It's like the very lovely uncle, the grand uncle, and such a sweet guy. And the fact that he is he's leading you off into a dead end, a cul-de-sac, this escapes all too many people.
Right, and so you're getting into this warm and fuzzy glow, and you're thinking in critical kind of. I suppose it's your skepticism is switched off or switched down a notch or more, and these things are slipped in so that you almost don't notice. And to me, when this happened with this interview, I didn't really want to listen to it because I knew what Niels Harris was like. His demeanour, as we were discussing, is rather unpleasant, shall we say. And but it's like Henrik is offering up these remarks for Harriet to package up and kick into his goal, which is the one of disinformation. And Harriet's the chemist, he knows his stuff, he's the scientist, and so people are going to listen to this guy. Oh, go to 9/11 consensus, as you said earlier. And so if it was just that program, you could almost say that Henrik was just being a bit dumb or not quite firing on all cylinders or whatever. But if you go and look at the guest list over the last few months, we've had several guests doing just what Niels Harriet did. We've had Mark Gaffney doing it, we've had Kevin Barrett doing it, and we've had this Jeremy Riss character who goes under this alien scientist pseudonym. They've had him on. And I've written articles. So
I see a pattern developing here, as you inform us, right? I mean,
right.
He's not asking you back or Dr. Wood or we'll call it a knowledgeable person about Dr. Wood's work or the evidence at the World Trade Center.
Right. So, we're getting these people offering these things up. And if all these Red Ice listeners are hearing all these people denigrating, the research of Dr. Judy Wood or denigrating her character and so forth, or saying that this book is just full of disinformation or whatever they say, then what are people going to end up thinking? So, I think just what we're going to...
Well, part of it is they would be very satisfied with turning enough people off. Oh, they throw up their hands. People can't arrive at the real truth, and it's just, it's such a mess that I don't want to deal with it. So they don't even have to persuade anybody of a mistruth.
Right. And I mean, what I actually wrote in this article, I put at the end that basically, I won't read it out verbatim, but I put 2 points at the end of this article where I'm, covering the Henrik and Niels Harriet discussion. And at the end, I put basically, that we know what happened at the World Trade Center. We don't have to consider it's a theory anymore. We know what happened. And when you understand that, there is no issue in the world that knowledge does not affect. Right. And then I pointed out that I write all these articles, and I'm still at it 7 years after I started, because it is the most important thing to understand.
We are all the beneficiaries of Andrew Johnson's work, especially on 9/11. Welcome back to the Reynolds Reveal. I'm your host, Morgan Reynolds, and we here at the Guerrilla Media Network do welcome calls, especially first-timers, 218-862-9829. Excuse me. And this afternoon, we have from the United Kingdom, Andrew Johnson, who's delved deeply into a number of topics. And Andrew, I guess we're near the end of our coverage today on 9/11, but we haven't quite reached it. So
okay.
Pick up that topic here.
Yeah, well, we're talking about this Red Ice radio thing, and we played this clip and so on. And really, essentially, what I wanted to try and do is illustrate the reaction that I got to that article that I posted, where I basically, all that I did was I reported the essence of what we played in that clip about Harriet and what Henrik said. And then I documented these other appearances by these, shall we call them naysayers. Let's be, slightly perhaps kinder than we might otherwise be.
And, your hysterical opponents.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And they've had some very strange takes on 9/11 being aired on this Red Ice Radio over the last few months. And so I wrote this article, which was my reasoned response, and trying to point out the importance of understanding what happened. As Dr. Wood has been at pains to point out for the last few years, and rightly so. So I posted this article. I didn't send it to anybody at Red Ice because I don't particularly draw attention to these things when I post them. I don't actually like posting them. I don't really like being in this situation where I have to post these things, but I feel there needs to be a documented record to, set the record straight, because there's so many people bending the record and changing it
Yes, I'm so grateful for your work. I have the same qualms or difficulties.
Yeah, well, you've done some of the same thing, haven't you? Because, I referenced a couple of your articles on this one that I've just done. But anyway, what happened was this article got posted, I think, yesterday or the day before. And then yesterday I got this email from somebody at Red Ice. It's not Henrik. It won't take people who know Red Ice long to work out who it is, but I won't mention them just at the minute. So their response to my article was, Andrew, you should be ashamed of yourself for writing such garbage about Red Ice after all our years of hard work and dedication, and especially after we were nothing but kind and helpful to you. In turn, you behave as a fearful worm, trashing us behind our back because you know the truth about 9/11. Well, how nice for you to be so certain. How enlightened you must be to determine what is theory and what is knowledge. Why are you so fearful to even listen to another person's point of view? Time and again we have said just because we interview someone it does not mean we agree with them. In fact, we did Judy a favour by interviewing Niels, but you lack the capacity to even begin to understand that principle. You lack the capacity to understand what really occurred at the end of that interview. So what if we interview someone who you don't agree with? Next time, we'll be sure to call you and ask first to see if it is okay with you, Andrew, since you know the truth. So what Henrik called Judy's work a theory because at the end of the day, it is to us. Have you seen the energy weapon with your own eyes? Yet you become high-strung like a little neurotic puppy, peeing on the floor when something doesn't fit in line with your belief or threatens it. Most of life on this planet is speculation, ideas, theories. You lack the ability to be a rational human being, let alone kind to your fellow truth seekers. Instead, you are quick to judge and slander. That speaks volumes about who you are. And this, now she quotes from my article, I know I might sound too harsh or judgmental, but we do know what happened to the WTC now, so to characterise knowledge as theory is dishonest. Henrik should know better. That's what I wrote in my article, and she's quoting that. Oh, so we all know what happened with all certainty. How? Huh? Wow, that arrogance. You do not even know Henrik, other than the kindness he showed you, and not to mention the years and years of his hard work, making it possible to interview researchers. In fact, Henrik was the first to interview Judy. Yet you, the enlightened one, trash a kind man you do not know personally, telling him who is Disinfo and who is not. You accuse Henrik of being Disinfo. You are so far gone while you accuse us of not being able to reason. And then she quotes from my article again. Perhaps as far as Red Ice goes, this shows that being immersed in conspiracy culture affects your memory or your ability to reason, and you can end up not knowing up from down, and that's a question that I pose. When I posted this on my Facebook page, people thought I was being unfair to Red Ice and Henrik, so I've already, pointed out what she's already saying, that people would not like what I would say. Of course people thought that because you are being out of line completely, but you cannot even see yourself. You say immersed in conspiracy culture after years and years of programs on a variety of topics, yet you yourself behave like a religious zealot in your remarks, gone beyond the point of being able to see up from down. Instead of being an arrogant truth fascist, telling other people what they should do or what they should think, look at your own self, Andrew. Learn to be a big man and let others make up their own minds and live their own lives. It is you who is spreading disinfo about a man and others who help that man, who you do not know. Your words will have consequences. Sorry, just Andrew, one final thing.
Kind of letter that you should write and then crumple up and put in the round file. In other words, you feel better, but it's worthless as a missive to anybody else.
The last statement is your words will have consequences by your own doing. So anyway, I just briefly will, I'll outline. I did respond to that message. I could see just from reading a few words the sort of message it was going to be. But I basically asked them where they got this fearful worm idea. I never trashed anyone in the article. I did point out that Henrik was dishonest, I did say that, so I suppose that you could interpret that as I was trashing him. But I wasn't really trashing him. I was pointing out that it is dishonest to call theory evidence, because the two things, we have different words for those things because they are different things. So to characterise one thing as another is indeed dishonest. I mean, it's just a statement of fact, really.
That's the way I would characterize it, is that you're pointing out, now Niels Harrit is pushing poop, and you're stating a fact. This is right. Poop. It's provably false, and right. He arguably, I mean, he knows exactly what he is pushing. Right. And then Henrik knows better, but he didn't have the courage or integrity to counter what Niels Harrit is saying.
Correct. And I think what is also interesting, it wasn't Henrik who sent me this message, it was somebody else. And I didn't even reference this person in my article. I referenced Red Ice Radio, and this person is associated with them, but I didn't. I was actually quite complimentary to them in the first part of the article, and I was. Well,
if Henrik were a kind man and a man of integrity, he wouldn't have ordered an underling to send this. He would be embarrassed and reprimanded. Right. And he really, if he knew about this, should send you, hey, I apologize, this was a mistake, and it's
right. I basically, just to finish this off, and we've probably spent too much time on it, but I wanted to put it out there because this is a sample of the kind of, SH1T that we have to deal with, and unfortunately, the way that this appears to other people, you and I can sort of sit here at opposite sides of the Atlantic and discuss this rationally and go through it and break it down and analyse it. But some people don't do that. Some people will just see the verbiage and the bad language and the insults flying and just think, this is just a food fight, and I just think it's horrendous. These people just don't know how to behave. They're uncivilised, whatever. And once somebody starts a fight or starts an attack, then when we rise to defend ourselves, that is also seen as a negative action. We're cast in a bad light.
Yeah.
And we're accused of creating these fights, when actually we're just striving to show that when people are misrepresenting what has been said, we're pointing that out. That's primarily what is being done.
I also want to re-emphasize this compliment I've given you earlier, and that is, from a historian's point of view, it's great to have this record on the record to see how all of this evolved.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that comment, because that's basically all that I've tried to do, and it's not doing this stuff. It's just. I've tried to do it as a way of illustrating what psychology is at work, and I've tried to do it as kind of like, an observational thing where I'll send out these emails almost like a test. I'll try and sort of put together a good sort of set of phrases that I've thought about carefully, and use that as a little mini experiment and see what comes back. Without any sort of emotive language, and I'll be a bit sarcastic at times and stuff like that. But
you have a very good temperament. You're very measured.
Thanks.
Okay, you've accumulated at least 4 years, if not 5 years, more of data, emails mostly.
Oh yeah.
For a follow up to your ebook, 9/11: Finding the Truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you going to follow up with another?
I've thought about it. Well, I've thought about it. I may sort of do a volume 2 possibly, but I think that I'd like to do it from perhaps illustrating some of the aspects of psychology that seem to be at work. We're dealing something which I would class as fundamentally evil here, and fundamentally there's a guy called Tom Sheridan that put it quite well. He talks about psychopaths and so on, and he describes it as a predatory form of consciousness, and that appears to be what we're dealing with in all of this. There's some predatory form of consciousness which is working, insidiously and sometimes openly and we stumble across it in like that response I read out. I mean, that's just, some of it's just poisonous and goes way beyond, what I would consider as appropriate.
Let's welcome back to the Reynolds Reveal. We here at the Guerrilla Media Network do welcome your calls, and the number is 218-862-9829. I'm your host, Morgan Reynolds, and my special guest today is Andrew Johnson from the United Kingdom. And he lives in the UK. I'm sure he was born, I'm guessing, but sounds to me like he was born in the UK. And he's worked in software development and education for some 25 years, developing software used in telecom and process control PCs and database systems. So, hey, he's an IT guy. Probably somebody I should talk to more often to help me out. And back in 2003, when he got broadband internet access, he began to research what he termed
basically a 2 to 3 hour, show with a break in the middle. And the first half, he talked quite a lot about 9/11, and he was basically talking about some of the things that I talked about in my book, in that we now know some of what happened on 9/11, particularly at the World Trade Center. And I know you've had Dr. Judy on a few times, and we've spoken about that at some length. And Richard was also talking about that in his tour, and that was kind of the basis for what he was saying about 9/11, in that we've essentially now got to the point where, we can prove pretty much what happened to the World Trade Center, and we know quite a lot about the sorts of, or the nature of the technology that was involved in doing what was done. And, when we go on from there, we can then document the effort to keep that knowledge covered up. And, he went into quite some detail about two people that have popped onto the scene. Well, one's been on the scene for quite a long time. Ian Henshaw, who's a UK guy, whose parents apparently, or one of his parents, worked for MI5 or MI6, I forget which one. And Ian Henshaw runs this website called Reinvestigate 9/11. And, I've sort of challenged Ian Henshaw as to why, he's organised several public events about, saying that the official story of 9/11 is untrue and all of this. But almost exclusively, he's talking about, limited hangout topics. He won't discuss, for example, your Keatam case. He won't discuss Dr. Wood's Keatam case. He won't discuss Where Did the Towers Go, the book. In fact, he won't really talk about any of those things. And I've basically asked him in several email messages, Ian, what
alternate knowledge topics? Yeah. I think that's a very nice way to put it, including his research into 9/11, anomalies on Mars, or at least the reports we get from NASA about Mars, the Apollo missions, chemtrails, and crop circles. And he's had association with Dr. Judy Wood's work and mine, and what he terms conclusive research into some of the events of 9/11. And he's posted lots of useful things on his website, checktheevidence.com. And then he's put out a free ebook called 9/11, Finding the Truth. And you will find amusement in there, as well as solid information about what's going on, much of it behind the scenes in the whole 9/11 effort. So welcome to the Reynolds Reveal, Andrew.
Thank you, Morgan. Thanks for that excellent introduction.
And we want to talk about maybe 5 or 6 of these issues that you've delved into. The first one I know quite a bit about, but you've got some news on 9/11. One of them being to tell us about Richard D. Hall's recent tour, and of course in episode 6 I had both of you on. So what can you tell us about Richard's latest enterprise there on 9/11?
Yeah, well, Richard, we discussed some of the things he was going to talk about on his tour, and basically Richard did, you can go onto his website and find the details, but he did about, I think, 8 or 9 dates over a period of about 2 weeks, I think, and he did basically